Welcome back. We're looking at America's role in Afghanistan and asking whether or not it is time for the U.S. to withdraw. I'm joined by former senior U.S. civilian representative in Afghanistan, Matthew Ho. He left his post saying he no longer saw any value in continued U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
From what you've been telling us about what is going on in Afghanistan, in your view, are there any viable options for salvaging the war effort? What should the U.S. be doing?
One of the things I want to be careful about as I discuss this and enter into this debate here in D.C. Is I want to concentrate on why. Why are we in Afghanistan? Does our presence there, will that bring us any strategic goal? Will it meet any strategic interest in the United States? I'm not so much concerned about the how. There are parts of General McChrystal's assessment I agree with. But if it doesn't merit the loss of the lives of our young men and women, then we shouldn't be there in that capacity. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Political reconciliation is really, I believe, the only way to end the civil war in Afghanistan.
Okay, let's go to the phones again. We have a caller from Virginia, right here in Virginia. Oliver's calling us. Oliver, go ahead.
Yeah, nice to have me.
Go ahead.
My question is to Mr. Ha. I mean, in Iraq, the U.S. paid a lot of money to the Sunni tribes in Ramadi area and in the Sunni Triangle, and they paid a lot of money to win their hearts and minds. So why we're unable to win the hearts and minds of the Afghani tribes? Are the Afghani tribes are different than the Iraqi tribes? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, why they don't pay them money and win their hearts and minds like what we did in Iraq?
Okay, Oliver, thanks for the question. Matthew?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it brings up one quick thing I want to say is Afghanistan is not Iraq. It's like comparing any two other countries in the world. There might be some similarities, but you have to really, truly understand and analyze each country on its own designs, own merits, own intricacies. With regards to paying for loyalty, I do believe that's an option that would work. Again, I want to concentrate on the why, but if it was something I believed in, that would be one way to go about it. That's how the Taliban have the allegiance to so many local groups, the ones who are fighting us, all these groups that are really only concerned about defending their valleys, a concept we call valleyism, a very small or a scaled-down version of nationalism. But the Taliban get their allegiance from these local groups by paying them. There might be some that are allied to the Taliban ideologically or have similar concerns, but for the most part, most of these groups are bought by the Taliban for their allegiance.
It appears to be a no-brainer. Why isn't that being approached? Why isn't that,
well, I think there's two things. One, I don't think we've made the effort to expand into local areas with that type of approach before. And I'm not sure if we have the organizational competence to do so. That's a very difficult and tricky aspect to do something like that. The other part, too, is that, remember, we're allied with the central government. And if this is a civil war, and the central government's on one side of it, we're on the central government side. So there are people who just don't want the central government in their lives, who, if the central government approaches them, is going to push them away anyhow. So it's very difficult. And again, Afghanistan is not Iraq. We have to be very careful about saying what worked in Iraq, what worked in Afghanistan. But I believe the approach of buying loyalties would work in Afghanistan. However, again, go back to it, I'm more concerned about why are we there in the first place as opposed to how.
In fact, we did get an email about that. This was from Tajwali Khan. He sent us an email via Facebook, and he asks, why doesn't the U.S. isolate the Taliban from al-Qaeda and bring them to the table? With American support, can they not form a better government than Karzai?
I'd say I'd have to agree with that. It's an excellent point, and I agree with that. Again, it goes back to political reconciliation is the key to stabilizing Afghanistan.
Well, there was President Karzai mentioned there, and as you know, he's just been declared the winner of the last election, the August election. Well, went into a runoff, one candidate withdrew. He's now the president. What kind of legitimacy do you think he enjoys in Afghanistan? I mean, I looked at some of them, of what you said in your letter, and you were very harsh on him. I mean, you said that he presides over a government that is involved in glaring corruption and unabashed graft, a president whose confidants and chief advisors comprise drug lords and war crimes villains, and there is a system of provincial and district leaders constituted of local power brokers, opportunists and strongmen, and the election process itself, you says, was dominated by fraud and discredited.
Yes.
He shouldn't be there.
He shouldn't be there. And to make to bring this back to the the things about why is America there and why are our NATO allies there. why are young American men and women backing up a regime like Karzai's? How many American husbands and sons have passed away in these last few months trying to set up democracy there, and this is what we got out of it? It really is a smack in the face. And furthermore, you look back at the Cold War and all the different despotic and corrupt regimes that the United States supported. A support of Marcos or support of South Vietnam or El Salvador or whichever one you want to pick, that didn't defeat the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union fell because of inherent weaknesses and corruption within their system. It's a system that represses liberty, represses freedoms. It doesn't allow for a market economy. It was destined to fail anyhow as long as we stayed strong on our end. The same thing here. Supporting a corrupt and illegitimate government is not going to defeat the message put forth by Al-Qaeda and other organizations like it. It won't.
How would you respond to those who say, look, you knew about all this before you went to Afghanistan, so why did you go in the first place?
I think now you get into some type of questions about life and personal journeys, I guess. I wasn't sure of it. At that point, I had spent my life in service to my country. I continued to want to do so. I had ideas that I would do this for 12 months or 15 months in Afghanistan and come back, go to school, and then enter into, continue with government service. And at that point, I hadn't been there, so I wasn't too sure. I had some thoughts about it, but I wasn't too sure, and I wanted to contribute.
If you look at the future in Afghanistan, do you see a development role for the United States in Afghanistan rather than a military role?
Sure. I see it no more than any other state that's failing or struggling in this world, and the obligation that the United States has as a good and just society to help its neighbors. But I don't think it should have any more prominence in our development efforts than other nations, particularly nations that have more of a strategic value or interest to us, say like Pakistan or even Mexico.
We have another email here, and this is from Rug Lewane, also sent us the email via Facebook, and he says, who presents the greatest obstacle in pulling out of Afghanistan, the Pentagon, the White House, or Congress?
I think it's domestic political concerns. I really do feel that at the end, and I'm glad this question was brought up. I just had a friend remind me last week that ultimately all foreign policy is a reflection of domestic policy. I feel at the end of the day, the president is going to speak with his closest advisors, and they're going to say, Mr. President, if you look weak on Afghanistan, whether or not you actually are or not, and something happens, whether it's connected to Afghanistan or not, you will lose the 2012 elections, and the Democratic Party would be hurt for a long, long time. And I'm afraid that that's how some of this decision is going to be made. So domestic political concerns, I think, are the biggest obstacle to us withdrawing from Afghanistan and then adjusting our policies to actually destroy Al-Qaeda and stabilize Pakistan. And
any talk of pullout will be construed as weakness?
I believe so. I believe so. Unfortunately, I believe so. And I'm desperately afraid that 4 years from now, it'll be 2013, and we'll look back and we'll say, what's the difference between now and if we pulled out in 2009? What did we get out of it?
Matthew Ho, thanks for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there. Time has caught up with us, and thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow the show and get updates on guests on Twitter. Tweet us your questions and comments, and we will include them in the program. On the next show, the UN General Assembly is gearing up to debate the Goldstone report that accuses both Israel and the Palestinians of war crimes. Will it lead to a credible investigation into what happened during the war on Gaza last winter? Make sure to tune in for that. We'll see you the next time.